Hi folks, welcome to your mwis Friday Planner in association with Ellis Brigham. A strong area of high pressure is in charge through this weekend, and high pressure will generally stay around into next week as well, with settled weather, dry conditions in the forecast, and a bit of a mixture of some low-level fog and cloud with inversion conditions in place. Now, things are becoming chillier as we head onwards through next week, and most indications into Christmas are looking cold, with much terrain frozen, and there's the scope for some snow in there as well. So some interesting developments about a week or so down the line. We shall come to that in a moment. First of all, a temperature map, and not really much use having a look at the freezing level at the moment. It's going to be quite complicated into next week in that respect. So this will do more use for the general story of where temperatures are going. And the long and short of this is representing around 800 to 950 metres or so on the mountains. Now this is this weekend, this is Saturday, with inversion in place. The warmest temperatures across Britain are going to be found on the Scottish Munros, where double figure temperatures are to be expected above that inversion. All the lower areas will be a good few degrees cooler. Temperatures are a little bit cooler where it's a bit murkier generally in the atmosphere across central England and East Wales. Now let's roll this story onwards. That inversion and that mild air at higher levels will stay around into Sunday. We will start to see a change developing from the northeast as a weak cold front comes down. So northeasternmost regions in Scotland will start to see a change of temperature, a lowering of temperature as we head onwards later in the day on Sunday. But the mountains still staying mild, maybe a degree or so lower than Saturday, still nudging up towards double figures though on the higher tops. Now, a general lowering of temperature then takes us onwards into next week. Coming in from the northeast, that inversion gradually breaking down, and the highest temperatures will be away from the picture by the time we get into Monday, and we're going to be hovering around freezing point. Now, some western tops will still stay above an inversion, not quite as warm as the weekend, but that will stay around in places, whilst more eastern regions are going to be somewhat chillier. We're going to go into a situation early next week where what we'd almost call isothermal conditions are going to exist on the mountains. That's where there's not a great deal of temperature variation with height from the low levels up to the higher tops. And that's really where we're going to be for a few days. There will be variation. There will still be some inversion conditions around where you run a few degrees above freezing point on the tops. But overall, it's going to be closer to freezing than it will have been over this weekend. And some frost will be around in the valleys and the glens quite commonly as well. A bit of a messy weather story then over a few days, but things get a little bit more straightforward in some respects from about midweek onwards, when broadly colder air is then expected to extend in from the northeast. But that's then going to do battle with some fronts which may have a go at coming in from the southwest, and we'll come to that story in a moment. Not a great deal to see on the synoptic charts for the next few days. High pressure strongly in charge through the day on Saturday. Not much wind for most places, but across Wales we have a southeasterly breeze which will be quite brisk, particularly in the morning. So the mountain tops broadly in the clear. This chart shows the general amount of cloud and fog. Where you've got the blacker colours on this map, it indicates clearer skies, so some areas of fog around the central lowlands in Scotland, and a greater likelihood of low cloud and fog a little bit higher up on the hills across central England and Wales. So the Peak District, you might be struggling to get too much above that low cloud layer. It could shroud things in even up onto the hills, and likewise for East Wales. But the higher tops around the Brecon Beacons and Snowdonia most likely above that inversion layer. Sunday keeps the high in charge. There's a weak cold front coming in from the northeast, and as we mentioned, that lowering of temperatures starting to arrive as we go on. Some high cloud just maybe coming into the far northeast associated with that. Maybe a few spits and spots just coming on to the far northeast of Scotland as well with that front, but little, if anything, of any measurable precipitation on that front. Again, we're dealing with an inversion and low-level fog and cloud. Maybe a greater chance of the Peak District getting above the fog level as the inversion just changes subtly by this point. Again, though, lowland areas across central England and the east of Wales very much likely to be clagged in with low cloud and murk. As that weakening front begins to move in across the country then, it's generally going to be a mistier, murkier sort of picture that develops across many eastern regions then. That inversion is breaking apart a little bit, so a greater likelihood of some banks of cloud and fog across some of the hill slopes, across more eastern hills right up into the highlands, but more western mountains still with that inversion situation happening. So the high tops in the west of Wales, probably the Lake District and the West Highlands should be above any low-level fog or cloud. A quiet weather story takes us towards the middle of the week as high pressure sticks around. A bit of a messy one though in terms of detail. There will be some areas of fog, there'll be some areas of low cloud and some places still above an inversion. Quite a bit of variation then. I won't get clever with local detail, but just expect some places to stay rather murky. Others will be favoured for some sunshine in places, again, above low-level fog. Not much wind to really move things around. Temperatures then hovering around freezing point, a bit above or below. A stagnant weather pattern into the middle of the week then, not a great deal changing, areas of low cloud and fog. Another weak cold front coming down from the north will see a further lowering of temperature as we head onwards into the second half of the week. Some Atlantic frontal systems just off to the west starting to show themselves, and that's the interest then as we roll on towards Christmas. Now, I must stress the uncertainty in the forecast detail as we go through to Christmas at this stage. A lot to play for in where the weather systems move towards, but one of the things we're perhaps most confident in at this stage is the temperature, and that is very likely to be cold as we go through Christmas. This chart shows a temperature anomaly, and that indicates temperatures relative to the long-term averages, and we're suggesting then below average temperatures broadly across Britain and Northern Europe through that Christmas period and into the following week. It means that mountain terrain is likely to be widely frozen and some frost into the valleys and the glens as well. Now, in terms of how the patterns may play out, initially then we're trying to draw in a southeasterly wind which comes in ahead of an area of low pressure over the Atlantic. We've already got cold air that's established then later in the week, and we're not really changing the air mass a great deal as we go through into Christmas. The area of low pressure is expected to be somewhere to the south of us as we go into the Christmas period, and the wind flow indicated as coming around more from an easterly type of direction. Now again, we're not quite sure where all these pieces of weather systems are going to lie at this point, but that brings the scope for something of a frontal system to come in from the south, which may bring some areas of precipitation, and in that cold air falling quite widely as snow, and also the easterly flow may of itself drag in some snow showers from the North Sea coming into more eastern hills and mountains. So a couple of areas which may produce some snow around the Christmas weekend. And if that chart's to be believed, then areas of low pressure staying well to the south, allowing a cold air mass to come in from the north, and that bedding itself in then as we just go into the start of the following week. Indications then keeping things cold and wintry on the mountains through into the Christmas period and beyond. We do have to watch though just how that pattern plays out through the week ahead. The suggestion though, even as we head towards New Year and early January, keeps high pressure towards the north of us and areas of low pressure running to the south. It's what we'd call quite a blocked weather regime. It's one which can keep colder air masses in charge for longer and bring wintry conditions. Now, there's been variation in the computer simulations in recent days, just how strong that high pressure to the north does stay. And in terms of whether it's genuinely settled weather or something more unsettled that gets into the mix through that time, and that may still take a few days to sort itself out as just to where we go in that pattern. But actually high pressure to the north is indicated well onwards into January as well. So you're thinking about western mountains in Scotland could see drier than average conditions for quite a while with that pattern, and chillier conditions could well prevail for a good spell into the new year. Plenty to watch then in the weather story at the moment. We shall keep up to date every day with your local forecast on the mwis website and all your video content as well. That's your Friday planner in association with Ellis Brigham. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.